We are very fortunate to have with us here this morning, and that sentence holds double meaning for us here today, our next speaker. Kathy Bernard was first diagnosed with melanoma in 2003. As a result, she discovered the consequences of spending time in the sun without sun protection. Prior to this, Kathy would rarely be found indoors. She loved to ski and to coach her son's Little League teams. She fought her way into remission in 2003 and again in 2005, after which she decided to create a foundation, the Save Your Skin Foundation. Perhaps some of you have heard of it. With the support of her family, friends, and volunteers in the community, she launched the foundation successfully. Today, this foundation provides information, treatment options, and support to those individuals affected by this disease. Kathy has played softball and baseball since she was 5, and she continues to this day. She has competed in a number of national and world-level competitions. She started coaching both of her sons, as many of us do, when they started playing, and in 1993, coaching her oldest son in the World Series Championships. She was the first and only woman to have ever coached in that competition, and to this day, her hat is in the Little League Hall of Fame. Kathy plays the piano, she loves music, has a great husband, 2 beautiful sons, and a brand new granddaughter. Her sister, brothers, mother, nieces, and nephews are a big part of her life, who she is, and the reason she survived. So please join me in welcoming Kathy Bernard to speak with us this morning.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Please don't get that perm. It's not as awesome as you think it's going to be.
You have to actually practice in order to learn to play guitar.
Whiskey tastes even worse on the way up.
Dear 16-year-old me, there's going to be a new set of Star Wars movies. Don't watch them. They ruin everything.
Dear 16-year-old me. This is where they took the cancer out. It was something called melanoma.
It's called malignant melanoma.
Malignant melanoma.
Malignant. That's not a very friendly word.
You'll be diagnosed when you're 28.
18.
36.
29.
22.
It's a tumor that starts in your skin cells, the cells that give your hair and skin color.
It's not just skin cancer.
Well, it is.
Well, it is.
But not just the...
Cut it out and it'll be fine kind, unfortunately.
It's the kind that you have to catch before it spreads.
Because it spreads so fast.
So fast.
To places like your liver, your lungs, your brain.
Yours will be a really rare kind in your left eye, and that's when you'll find out.
That melanoma can show up on your tongue, the palms of your hands, and the soles of your feet.
Your doctors will tell you you're lucky that you caught it early.
Yours will tell you that you need aggressive treatment.
I'll have to tell you it might take a year of chemotherapy.
And you'll need to do some of the injections yourself.
Dear 16-year-old me,
You're doing okay.
you're strong.
But there are some things I want you to know.
I wish I'd known.
That one bad sunburn before you turn 18.
Doubles your chances of developing melanoma.
That fair skin and red hair means that you're at a higher risk of getting it.
As if ginger people didn't have enough problems.
That you're at higher risk if you've got more than 50 moles.
And if you have a weakened immune system or a family history of skin cancer.
I want you to know the outlook is very good if we can catch it early.
But you have less than a 10% chance of surviving more than 5 years if we don't.
Dear 16-year-old me.
Spend more time with family. They mean everything.
If I had one piece of advice for you, don't start the tanning bed. I know you want a healthy glow, but it's going to double my chances of getting melanoma.
Sunscreen.
Yes, I agree. It's a huge pain in the ass, but so worth it. Please.
Your skin's like an elephant. It never forgets.
Dear 16-year-old me, helping spread this message is how you'll honor Glenna's memory. At 16, she's already an incredible lifeguard. She loves the sun and the beach and tanning, but she just doesn't know.
She'll be diagnosed when she's 22 and will lose her battle when she's just 26.
I want you to know, because it's melanoma that's going to take the strongest man you know your best friend, and the love of your life.
Dear 16-year-old me,
Don't be afraid. This isn't about being afraid.
I want you to be aware.
That melanoma is a young person's disease.
It is the second most common cancer in children and teenagers, and one of the most common in young adults.
And it can be deadly.
I want you to know you're not helpless.
This is a cancer that shows itself.
Right there on the outside of you.
start checking your skin.
Please check.
Get to know your skin.
Get to know your skin.
Start checking your skin.
If a new mole shows up,
Or if when you have starts to change color
Or size, or shape.
or feels different.
If something seems out of place, get your doctor to have a look as soon as possible.
Know what to look for and get help. These are all signs your skin could be developing cancer.
You brush your teeth every day, maybe even floss,
Okay, we both know you don't floss.
but just once a month. I want you to check.
It takes 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Dear 16-year-old me, I do realize you're not actually going to see this, but someone else will, and it'll make a difference to them.
Dear someone else.
Dear somebody else.
If you're watching this,
send it to a 16-year-old you care about.
Send it to anyone who was once 16.
Or soon will be 16. Send this.
And check yourself. Educate yourself.
You can download tools and information about melanoma here.
Share this link.
Tweet this link.
Post this to your Facebook.
Dear 16-year-old me, I would not have bought that sun lamp from the Simpson Sears catalog with my very first paycheck at 15. I would not have lathered my skin in baby oil, put Alcan foil on the roof of my mother's house, and laid there trying to change its color. I would have listened to the neighbors of my mom in Palm Springs when they saw me lying in the 108-degree sun with no sunscreen, and they said a word: melanoma. I wish I had been happy in the skin I was given, because I know now I would rather live with what I have than die with what I so desperately needed. I want to thank everybody today, and I have to tell you, it's very hard to speak after these videos because we personally have met a lot of these people. We've lost a few of them. That video is probably the most watched YouTube video ever. It was done by a group from Deloitte and Tude, and I probably pronounced that wrong, who did it in memory of a co-worker, David Cornfield, who lost his battle to this disease. Now I need to tell you, the landscape of this disease has changed even since that was done, and I'm sort of living proof of that. But firstly, I want to thank Roy and Lorraine for having me this morning. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day. I think we made you cry a little bit. I need to thank your sponsors, because one has kept me alive, one may need to keep me alive, and two of them on there have picked up substantial costs of all the drugs that I have been given. So I want to take you down a little bit of my journey, and I do this presentation a lot to doctors, and they like graphs, so I did it in graph form, and I think you can all relate, because this will also show you the cost to you as an employer when your employees get this type of disease and what their journey would look like. 2003, I had a mole on my back, a lump on my left elbow. I was heading to Australia to play ball. My family pushed me into going see the mole get checked, because we all thought that's what skin cancer looked like. I went in, the mole was fine. The lump, they said, was fatty tissue, and off I went to play ball. And when I got back, I had two lumps on the left elbow. The mole was still the same. So I went back, and she said, "Oh, don't worry yet, you're 47. It's just fatty tissue, it'll go away." But then the lump started turning purple. And I thought, okay, this doesn't look very good. But it was only the size of an eraser, so it wasn't really too big of a warning sign. I went in. We had surgery to take one out. I was told it was benign. They wanted to take out the second one just as a precautionary. And 3 days later, I got a phone call from my doctor, went to her office thinking things were fine, and she sat in front of me and said, "You have metastasized malignant melanoma. You need to go home and get your affairs in order, and we need to get you to an oncologist." 3 hours later, I was in for a chest x-ray. I went over to my doctor in North Vancouver, who's Dr. Klimo, one of the leading oncologists in the world, and he said, I have good news and I have bad news. And I said, oh, what's the good? He said, or no, the bad first I'll take. He says, you have malignant melanoma. He said, the good news is the drug, one and only drug that you need here in Canada would cost you $15,000, but you're lucky because it is spread to your lymph system, so you get it for free. Now, I wasn't sure if that was really good news or bad news. So I started this drug, it's called interferon, and I had 5 doses, high doses after my surgery. I had high-dose radiation, and then I had to inject myself for 365 days. My life was literally comatose. My hair thinned, I had very little energy. I still coached my baseball because it was the one thing I had in my life. I just coached it sitting down instead of standing up. The girls that I was coaching at that time got a break because I couldn't yell at them very loud, so they were pretty happy. I finished all my treatments in 2004. My family and I knew we had just dodged a huge bullet. I went back to work. I worked for the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia. I'd been off for 365 days, and I walked back into my office September 1st, and they said, what are you doing here? We need to integrate you back into work. I said, I don't want to be integrated. I just need to be at work. I need my normal life back. I need me back. So everything looked good. I had my regular appointment in January for my chest x-ray, and nothing on my lung. By March, I had a little bit of a wisp when I was running, and I went in, they did another chest x-ray, and there was a 14-centimeter mass in my left lung. I went to a surgeon and was told that the mass was in all 4 quadrants, so the only thing they could do was totally take the lung out. I went back to my doctor, and he said, unfortunately, we have nothing else for you in Canada. We have a chemotherapy that either works or doesn't work. We will give you 2 to 3 rounds and know at that point whether it works or not. So they did a number of other scans besides my 14-centimeter mass. It was in my liver, it was my kidney, it was my bone, it was my adrenal gland. I was literally full. I went through the 2 rounds of dacarbazine. It wasn't working. My family, we all jumped in a plane and went to Britain thinking it was going to be the last trip. When I went back for my 3rd round, my son, who, unknown to me, had contacted a doctor in the US, and he said, we need to keep my mom alive. What have you got? And he said, we're doing a trial here that we can bring into Canada, but BC wouldn't bring it in. Edmonton, Alberta brought it in for me. There was a cost of $40,000 plus all my travel. It was an intensive, intensive drug. It either kills you or saves you. We're never sure what. I was the 5th Canadian to get it, the only one to complete the cycles, and the only one to have a complete response in that lung. So I got very, very lucky, we thought yet again. It was very financially and emotionally difficult for our family. I'm sure you can imagine, traveling back and forth to Edmonton. I needed to take somebody with me. I was in intensive care. I code blued a couple times, and unfortunately in front of my family, so it was pretty staggering to all of us. But it cleared, and we were pretty excited about that. So I kind of felt like a little pioneer because I had done all these drugs and brought in a drug that now was showing some promise. And the hard part was, how do we get that drug for patients in this country? Because it was literally a US trial, and until it goes through some type of trial process here in Canada, it cannot be administered. So in 2006, when all this was happening, we realized very quickly as a family that this disease is very, very orphaned. And I did a little picture. Sorry, I'm going to jump around here. Our journey was like I had been thrown into orbit. And my doctor said when I left her office, do not get on the internet because that's bad stuff. Within 5 minutes of getting home, 4 of us were on the internet. All the information was American. There was no survivors. There was no treatment. There was absolutely nothing. I felt like we were totally in the abyss. I took my solar system and I gave it each a cancer. And cancer is never a good thing. I don't care what kind it is, whether it's a bad one, a good one, an unknown one, it's cancer. And when you get told that, and I'm sure a lot of people in this room have dealt with this disease, it's a staggering, staggering disease. But I took this little planet, where is he? Oh, he's not even showing over on that right side, I don't think. Oh, there's an arrow over there. That's okay. He's Pluto. And I picked Pluto for a couple of reasons. Firstly, he's the smallest planet in the orbit. Secondly, he just got dumped from the planet list. Did you know? He's a dwarf. And he's a dwarf planet because he does not circle his neighborhood of orbits. And I thought, now how appropriate. Here's a disease that is growing faster than any cancer. It still has little recognition. It's a disease that we can prevent, we can cure if caught easy, but if left, has deadly, deadly consequences. So I thought my journey, I'm sorry I have to do all this back the way, I thought my journey was over. And we thought, oh, this is good. I didn't go back to work because I wasn't sure what I was doing to my poor employee as I was sick, home, back, off. And I guess I'm kind of fortunate I didn't. In 2007, I had a stomach ache, went in. They found a 9-centimeter mass in my small bowel, surgically had it removed. There was absolutely nothing left for me at this point, and they could not do the IL-2 again. It would have just killed me. So they asked me to go speak at the Melanoma conference in Banff to all the doctors of Canada and the US to talk about my journey. And when I finished, 2 of the doctors came over and said, we are actually doing a compassionate trial on a drug called Yervoy, and it's manufactured by Bristol Myers Squibb. And they said, because we have nothing for you, you are actually eligible for that study. So I said, take me as I am, went in, had to go back to Edmonton, Alberta. I had 4 cycles of the Yervoy. I was part of the initial clinical trial, so they still were collecting data. After I finished the trial in 2008, I went in for my scan, and they noticed that the tumor on my kidney was growing very, very, very slowly. So that stopped me from any more of the clinical access maintenance program, because it was part of the protocol that if the disease was progressing, that you had to be taken off. So I went in and literally had my right kidney removed. No way I could live with one. And then as this has progressed, we have discovered that through this clinical trial, because this is actually an immunotherapy, it's nothing like a chemotherapy. So what it's actually doing is building your own immune system to fight your cancer. And so what they've discovered now is that with this drug, sometimes you'll see a huge progression of the disease and then it'll completely disappear. So in hindsight, I probably could have kept my kidney. I didn't get very much money for it. And, but also being able to be part of a clinical trial as a cancer patient who has no options is huge. So we never want to look our little gift horse in the face. So what happened is after we sort of got all our affairs in order, my sister had said to me, we do not want anybody else to have to deal with this. The finding of their own information, the support, the finances, it was unbelievably staggering to us. So we pulled a group of friends, co-workers together, and we started the Save Your Skin Foundation. And this was in 2006, so it was actually right in the middle of all my treatments. So they had part of me one day, a full day the next. We came up with our mission statement. We are a registered nonprofit. And we do all these wonderful things. But the most wonderful thing that I think we do is that very last line where we are dedicated to everybody in this country that is touched by this disease. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody. Our objectives originally were to raise money for the financial assistance and to raise education of the disease. We wanted to raise funds for further research, but then we discovered we were way too small for that, because when I say we, I mean me. This is our logo and our website. And it has its own little story. My neighbor, who's a graphic artist, has 2 kids that always spent every day in my home. And when he heard about my disease and that we were starting the foundation, asked me one day if I'd take my hand and put it on in black ink and then on a piece of paper. And lo and behold, the logo is my actual hand. You can look really close and you'll see 2 broken baseball fingers in there somewhere. At the last year, we have grown significantly across this country. We now have a French website as well. We've had some incredible milestones. We have over 1.5 million website hits, 136 visits. Right now, we're getting upwards of 200 and 300 visits a day. We have over 425 followers on Facebook today, and 421 on Twitter, and we also have a newsletter that we sign out. Now, I was just actually in Ottawa presenting to patients there about the new landscape of the disease and the new treatments that have just been approved by Health Canada, but also met with the health minister to talk about the need for the awareness, the education, and the prevention of this disease. So that's why I think our Facebook hits have gone up. We have started support groups across the country It's been very difficult for us because people like a one-on-one support, so we're now trying to figure out how we can incorporate something like that and have a coach where we assign a patient to another patient. We have helped families all across this country get to treatments. We've had a young man in Florida, we've had a young woman in Philadelphia, we have a couple from BC that are close to the Edmonton border, so we're sending them to Edmonton. We have been instrumental in the advocacy of this disease for patients. We now have it administered here in BC, not at BC Cancer Agency quite yet, but at Dr. Klimo's office on the North Shore. But I think I need to tell you a little bit about this disease. And I'm sure that video pretty well encompasses just about everything I need to say. There are 5,300 new cases of melanoma every year, 920 deaths a year in this country. But the most staggering is it's the fastest growing cancer, and it's the now second most common cancer in our young people. And 90% of melanomas are caused by UV exposure. And when you look at the survival rate, you can see why the doctors call me little girl walking, or dead girl walking, I'm not sure which, because when you get to that stage 4, the 5-year survival rate is 10%. It's not very good. But if you look at that early stages and that early detection, it's huge. This disease is the one cancer that can be prevented, and if caught early, is totally curable. So what are some of the rules? Because I need you to take these home. Never expose babies and children under the age of 3 to direct sunlight. It horrifies me when I go for a walk on the seawall and all those new babies are out without a hat. You need to make sure those kids are protected at all times. You need to know to put your sunscreen on 20 minutes before you go outside. Not once you get out and say, oh, the sun peeked through the clouds. You need to reapply every 2 hours. If you're an athlete, even more. If possible, you need to avoid that direct sunlight at 11 to 4, and I know that's very difficult. And to remember that any time those UV rays reach the earth, whether it's sunny days, cloudy days, any time those sun rays are hitting, you need to be protected from the sun. And we talk to people, people always say to me, well, what type of sunscreen should we use? And I always say, the one you put on, because there's no use buying one that you don't like the feel of or the texture of or just doesn't agree with your skin. But there's 3 different types of UV rays, and this is what concerns me a little bit now with our environmental change, is the fact that those UVC rays that never reach the surface of the earth could very possibly be reaching the surface of the earth in the future, the way we are depleting our ozone. And we know when we look at Australia and the incidence of melanoma there, they're quite staggering. And the doctors will say they think it's because of the ozone depletion and the fact that they get a lot more sun than we do. But I also remember back in the 70s when I was in Scotland that they were asking all the Brits to move to Australia to build this incredible colony. And what I have known is all the patients we have helped have been of some British descent. It's almost the skin tone. It's the light skin, the blue eyes, the red-haired tint. So I think for us in the future, we have to be very cognizant of those UVC rays. We have lots of SPFs. You all know how that works. We used to all put on baby oil. We all remember that commercial where the dog's pulling down the little girl's bikini bottom to show how dark she is and how white her bottom is. I'm of the age where when I went to a swimming pool, they made me shower my sunscreen off before I got in. Now the Canadian Dermatology Association is recommending that we need at least 30 and more. And I think for us in BC, our issue is we have a quality of life here in BC like nowhere else in this country. There was one day when I was skiing at Whistler and I went golfing in West Vancouver on my way home. We have probably the most outdoor activities there are in this country. We're a very healthy outdoor group. And so for me, the need for this sunscreen and the protection is even greater here than anywhere else. So how can you help? I have to tell you, when I was first diagnosed, I knew right away that I needed the biggest support group I could get. And that was my family and my friends and, the usuals, my spiritual beliefs and everything all cancer patients say. But it wasn't until about 6 months ago when I actually did this presentation in Toronto that I realized a big key player in my ability to cope and function with this disease was actually my employer. I worked for a great company. I had long-term disability, so it took all the pressure off about finances. I had a couple of good third-party carriers, so when I had to go and get a shot for $1,500 that I needed 10 of, when I was having a little heart attack and handed over my third-party carrier card to the pharmacist and got my $250 bill, I was actually pretty happy. So it helped in a lot of ways. And I think mostly where it helped is the fact that we did have a package. When you have cancer, it's such a varied disease. It's the thought of the cancer, it's the emotional, the financial, the scars. There's so much that cancer encompasses. And there's so many things that you have as employers that you probably would even take for granted that these cancer employees of yours may need. It's been 9 years. This is always a really tough time for me. I was diagnosed Mother's Day of 2003, so every odd year of Mother's Day I have a reoccurrence. The last couple of years we've been all clear. So we get a little excited about it, but we get a little nervous as well. So I have to tell you, through all of the process, I knew I had my massage and my meetings with somebody who could talk me through it, and we didn't need it. We did it okay. And now, after all those years, you'd think we'd be able as a family to say, oh, we're good. This is actually now when we need the support. And this is now actually where I've been calling my employer saying, can you remind me again, what did I sign when I first started here? What did my third party give me? Because I'm sure there's things in there that we as a family really drastically need. So how can you help? Just being here is help. That wellness to your employees is huge. It's huge. Education. If you do anything, it's May. The whole world pronounces May as Melanoma Awareness Month. We don't in Canada. We have a Melanoma Monday. We have a Sun Awareness Week. But take this month. If you have anything going out to your employees where you can remind them of the dangers of the sun, please take that advantage. If you would ever like us to come in and do a lunch and learn, we would love to be there to talk to your employees about the dangers of the sun. There is a number of ways that you can be an instrumental part of this. And nobody ever wants to talk about the cost to an employer, and I will, because now that I have the foundation, I'm sort of an employer. But the cost to the healthcare system in 2004 to melanoma, or to skin cancer in general, was over $500 million. That was direct and indirect costs. And over $400 million of that was for melanoma. And I keep looking and thinking, but this is such a preventable disease. We just have to stay safe, be smart, and check our skin. So I kind of took a little look, because I have to tell you, I loved that MAP plan, my action plan. As I was telling Donna earlier, maybe I've survived this disease, but I truly right now have some mental health issues, I have to admit. I don't know if I'm a survivor. I call myself Ned, because there's no evidence of disease. But right now, I totally would be using her information to help me and my family get through this process, because it's an ongoing process, and we just never know when it will end. So I would recommend you have your employees look at that for a number of reasons. If you have the chance to put up education materials, we have them. If you ever want us to come in, we would do that. This is very new, our foundation. It's me and my son, who just graduated from BCIT, and he helps me, or I boss him around most of the time. But we have grown right across the world. We were just invited to Denmark to be part of an environmental working group on the change to the environment and the number of skin cancers now diagnosed because of that. We talk all over the world, I do. We help patients all over the world. The beautiful thing of the World Wide Web is that we are one big world. We have helped a woman in Australia. We've helped people in the US. We just helped a woman in Paris, France. We have that ability to connect people where they need to be connected, and we're very, very proud of that. We don't have a lot of funds, so we do a lot with a little, but we've had so much support from people. It's just been incredible. So I'm going to just leave this with you. When I went to meet with the health minister, I was told I had to have an ask. And I said, okay, I'll have an ask. Everywhere else in the world, there's Melanoma Month. We don't have it. I want it. We have a week, we have a day. Not good enough for me. We just had 2 new drugs approved. It's been over 30 years since there was a drug for this disease. We now have 2. One by Bristol Myers Squibb, one by Roche. They have just been approved by Health Canada. Of course, now we all know what happens. The file will go to the province, and the province will decide who gets, who doesn't get, who picks up, who pays, and that'll all be one of your issues, I'm sure, in a year from now. So what we're doing is we're advocating for those drugs, for those patients. Our big thing is we all need equal and timely access to a drug for cancer. No matter what the cost, no matter where we have to get it, we need that. I am living proof that this disease, you can live with this disease. And we have lost 7 young children in the last 5 years. And I call them my young children because they were all under the age of 30. They did not use a tanning bed. They weren't sun worshipers. They were all athletes, really good athletes. They just forgot to put the sunscreen bottle in their gym bag. So I have my ask for you. Spring has sprung. The sun is trying to pop its head out because it's Vancouver. So on your way home, I need you all stop and pick up that bottle of sunscreen. Ladies, put it in your purse. Men, put it in your glove compartment, your jib bag, wherever it is. Because I was just speaking in Ottawa, I got on a bike, started riding around the Ottawa River. Because I used to work for ICBC, I was all concerned because I didn't have a helmet on. And then I looked down and went, oh God, I forgot my sunscreen. It wasn't sunny when I left this morning. So put that sunscreen where you're going to pull it out, put it on. Remember to apply it before you go out. My third thing, and I told you in this video, check your skin. Check your husbands, check your wives, check your employees, check your children. Check, check, check. Anything looks odd, you go in. I had to take my son in, actually, because the dermatologists call him the ugly duckling syndrome because his whole lower back is covered in mole. And I said to them, oh my God, what should I do? And they said, every week, take a picture of all those moles. You got all your computers and your Macs, you just keep them pulling up every week. Take a look at that picture, look at that mole. If it's changed, go see someone.
Well, the son of a 12-year-old, which we just got back from Mexico over spring break, and I saw his sunburn. Any opportunity to get this into the schools, that advertisement specifically? It seems like it should be standard material for all high schools.
It absolutely should be. And you know, it's coming from the ICBC background. We did a lot of campaigns in high schools with youth on road safety. And that's the one thing I really took away from what I did in my previous job is the tools. We're doing a poster campaign right now in high schools. We're doing a tan-free grad prom. We are doing, we have speakers. We had 2 young girls actually that contacted us about a month ago that are in their 20s that have already had some melanoma removed and were huge tanning bedders. So we've got them right now in every high school in BC talking. But the one thing I know from my previous job is when we need to spread the message, you know, who better to spread it than your child? You know, when we brought in seatbelt legislation in this country, it was my sons that reminded me to put my seatbelt on. I would buckle them in, and then I'd just jump in and drive away. So what we're going to be looking at in the next year is how we start implementing these programs into career and personal planning, into elementary schools. So when you forgot to put sunscreen on your son, he would have reminded you. Or he would have put his hat on, and he would have told you to do it. Because who better to teach us than them? And who would we rather listen to, our children or our wives?
Okay, Pat's got a question.
Is there a safe level of a tan?
No. No. The minute your skin turns color, it's trying to fix itself. You have damaged it. You have damaged it. So it's melanoma is when the change of the melanocytes happen in your skin. So it's danger. So as soon as you see any color, well, firstly, you've left it a little bit too late because you shouldn't be showing color. And you have actually damaged your skin. A lot of the times they say that melanoma is from a bad burn under the age of 18, but the more the disease becomes part of our new landscape, we're realizing a lot of other things, right? The UV exposure, the fact that everybody thinks they need vitamin D, right? And we do need vitamin D. But do we need to be getting it from 8 hours of sun? No. So there's a lot of misconceptions around what that sun actually does to us, right?
Here's another question.
Being a mother of a teenage daughter who's now 24, she was always going into tanning beds, which I'm still concerned about that she had done that. She has since stopped that, since I got statistics off BC Cancer Research. But why are we still allowing these tanning beds? Even though now they say that 18 and younger, they have to have their parents' consent. I can't imagine even a parent wanting to consent to that, but they have to have their parents' consent. Why are we still allowing business licenses for these tanning salons?
I have no clue. When we were asked to be part of all the tanning bed legislation in the beginning, we were careful because we know we still lose a lot of people to this disease that don't use the tanning bed. So we didn't want to primarily say that's the main cause of the disease. But it's a known carcinogenic, so it is a problem. You're getting UV exposure. So we've been asked right across the country to support all the initiatives provincially. When I was in Ottawa this week, I was meeting with MP James Bazan, who is actually in September going to be going to the Hill and asking for federal legislation, still for under 18s. That to me is not good enough. In Australia, they've removed them all. Everywhere in Australia, a block where there was a tanning bed, there's now a dermoscopy, which is a machine that you can walk through for $20, and it would literally scan your skin. So they're getting it. And people will say, well, they need to get it. But I don't think we're all too far behind. We all need to be getting this before the disease becomes pink. And we get to a point where the numbers that are dying of this disease is greater than we need it to be.